Die Epoch Times wurde im Jahr 2000 von Exilchinesen gegründet, um unzensiert über die Menschenrechtsverletzungen in China zu berichten. Fakten und Wahrhaftigkeit sind seither unsere friedliche Lösung, um Propaganda und Zensur entgegenzutreten und für die Freiheit einzustehen. Unvoreingenommene Berichterstattung ist die Grundlage für wahrhaftige Informationen und reale Meinungsfreiheit. Cancel Culture und Political Correctness haben deshalb bei Epoch Times keinen Platz. Wir berichten, Sie entscheiden. Mittlerweile sind wir in 22 Sprachen und 36 Ländern vertreten. Wir fokussieren Fakten und bilden ein breites Spektrum von Expertenmeinungen ab. Das gefällt jedoch nicht jedem. In China sind wir einer der größten Staatsfeinde. Die KP Chinas inhaftiert unsere Reporter, verübte Brandanschläge und im Westen werden wir vielfach in finanzieller Weise attackiert. Doch die Epoch Times blieb immer standhaft und ist zu einer Größe gewachsen, die nicht mehr ignoriert werden kann. Millionen unserer Leser und Zuschauer schätzen unsere Überparteilichkeit sowie unsere neutrale und sachliche Tonalität. Unsere Mission ist es, die Aufrichtigkeit des traditionellen Journalismus wiederzubeleben. So decken wir ein breites Spektrum von Informationen und Meinungen, die andere Leitmedien nicht bringen. Wir sind zu 100% abonnentenfinanziert und damit nur Ihnen, unseren Lesern und Zuschauern verpflichtet.
Viele Parteien sagen, wir sind die Mitte, aber genau in dieser Mitte eigentlich Bedarf gesehen wird für neue Angebote. Man merkt auch, dass da eine Regierung ist, die eigentlich nicht zusammenpasst. Also ich rechne damit, dass die Wahlbeteiligung höher sein wird, als sie vor 5 Jahren war. Es ist der Regierung nicht gelungen, die Leute davon zu überzeugen, dass der Kurs, den sie einschlägt, richtig ist. Eine hohe Wahlbeteiligung ist vor allem auch eine Gefahr für die Parteien, die um die 5%-Hürde kämpfen.
Kay hat Dutzende ehemaliger kommunistischer Funktionäre interviewt und offizielle Dokumente und Reden durchforstet, um die Weltanschauung der Bediensteten des Regimes zu verstehen.
Die Medizin hat sich davon wegentwickelt, uns einfach nur gesund zu machen, besser als gesund zu machen.
Größer, schneller, stärker, intelligenter, den Menschen in gewissem Sinne zum Übermenschen macht.
Die großen Produkte des 21. Jahrhunderts werden Körper und Geist sein.
Nehmen wir die Genomeditierung als Beispiel. Es sind Sie, wer verändert wird.
Diese neue Geneditierungstechnologie, bekannt als CRISPR, ist für die Genetik und die Gentechnologie, was die Atombombe für die Physik war.
Es ist, als würde man operieren mit einer Axt.
Wir verwenden genetisch veränderte Organismen und wir injizieren sie in die Arme kleiner Kinder. Wir spritzen sie einfach direkt in die Vene.
Es ist aus gutem Grund experimentell. Wenn Sie eine Laborratte sein wollen, dann machen Sie das. Ich war es.
Es ist nicht für Sie, gar nicht. Aber sie sind nicht zum Wohle der Menschheit da. Das war nicht der Hauptzweck der sozialen Medien.
Wir können nicht einfach unseren Platz als Mensch in dieser Welt verleugnen.
Dass die Menschen, die die Götter vernichten wollen, enorme Macht erhalten. Und diese Leute streben nach enormer Macht.
Ich glaube, dass wir uns auf dem Weg zur Weiterentwicklung von Homo sapiens zu Göttern befinden.
Deshalb denke ich, dass es der
We are honored that you made your way to Berlin. My name is Reinhard Wolski. I'm the chairperson of this conference, and I have the honor and pleasure to lead and guide you through the program of our 2 days event, introducing our prominent speakers and panelists. I've collaborated with my team to formulate the program and the fora and the panels for you to offer to you. A great thank you to the Republic of Estonia, our partner nation, for the excellent hospitality at the pre-event last night. Your Excellency, Ms. Ambassador Lindner, my sincere thanks. Since we have a VIP attendance, a great VIP attendance, I must say, as intense as in last year at this conference, and because of the Russian threat and the Russian war in Europe and other dangerous situations in the Middle East, we have to take some special additional security measures together again with the police and other services, of course. One result is that we all must register again tomorrow for the second day. I'm sure you all see the requirement of enhanced vigilance. Please support us in this matter. Also, in case of emergency, you will get information by the voice announcement system in all rooms. One last request of my side: if you look at the conference program for today and tomorrow, you will see that there's not very much room for maneuver. It's again a tight schedule. So I kindly urge all speakers to use their time, but not more, and the plenary to be in here after the coffee and lunch breaks also on time, taking into account the new routes towards here over that. Also, if you need a headset, it's available over there at this pylon on the left side of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I would kindly ask you now to stand up for the national anthems of the Republic of Estonia, of Germany and the EU hymn, played by formation of the Stabsmusikchor der Bundeswehr. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the team from the Staatsmusikchor der Bundeswehr. Thank you very much indeed. I would like to hand over to the podium to Dr. Eva-Charlotte Proll, the Editor-in-Chief and Publisher of the Behördenspiel Group and CDO, for her welcome address. Madam, you have the word.
Welcome, Ministers, State Secretaries, Excellencies, Admirals, Generals. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and thank you for attending this event in such substantial numbers. When we, as Behördenspiegel, organized the first Berlin Security Conference 23 years ago, people participating this Congress from the beginning mentioned others saying, "We have NATO, why should anyone else in this context? A private medium, newspaper, how can anyone else discuss about security?" And there we are, 23 years later. Berlin Security Conference established to the biggest independent platform of security, and I'm very proud to be part of it. The threats, ladies and gentlemen, have never been so multipolar, so hybrid to our core values, freedom and democracy, which is the Congress motto of this year. 1,000 days ago, Russia attacked the sovereign nation Ukraine, violating international rules. And more than 13 months ago, Hamas brutally attacked Israel. Violence dominates the Middle East. But according to the values, freedom and democracy, this year's partner country is Estonia. It's small, but to a very big part digital, and it also has a huge geopolitical stress in this situation. I'm very thankful for having Estonia as partner country of this year's BSC. Thank you. The Russian invasion of Crimea Peninsula was a wake-up call for all free and democratic states within the EU and the NATO. We also got 2 new member states in the EU. But what's next? 75 years after founding of NATO, defense plans are being finalized, certified in exercises. We also have to be self-critical. The budget plan of 2% GDP was made before all those threats. Within this conference, we'd like to discuss this with you. We discuss operational, technical, and scientific topics around this. And I would like to thank especially Wolfgang Hellmich, who has been Congress President of the Berlin Security Conference since almost 3 years, but it's going to be the last in this role. So thank you very much, Wolfgang Hellmich. And I would like to thank my team, especially Reinhard Wolski, Thomas Gregersen, Nina Parisi and Cornelius Lauritzen, I'm not going to name them all, for organizing this wonderful conference. Thank you. And now I look forward on 2 days with you to discuss the actual topics on security. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Proll. I would like to announce again our Congress President of this 23rd Berlin Security Conference. Since 2012, Wolfgang Hellmich is Member of Parliament, member of the Defense Committee. From May 2015 until the end of the 19th legislative period, he was Chairman of the Defense Committee. He is substitutional member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs and member and treasurer of the NATO Parliamentarian Assembly. Wolfgang Hellmich is spokesman of the Social Democratic Party for the Working Committee for Security and Defense Policy. Mr. Congress President, welcome. You have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Wolski. Thank you, Mrs. Proll. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I warmly welcome you to the 23rd Berlin Security Conference here at the Hotel Andels. The participation of more than 2,000 attendees clearly illustrates the urgent need for exchange and dialogue to create clarity and perspective. This need is not only understandable, more than that, it is essential for our common future, for our freedom, and for our security. At this day, we are looking to the east. 1,000 days of war from Russia and Putin against Ukraine. 1,000 days, missiles, drones are falling down to the Ukraine. 1,000 days are deaths in the Ukraine, and 1,000 days the Ukrainian defends their land, their children, their sisters, their fathers, their mothers, their husbands, their wives. 1,000 days, and we are at the point to go forward with our sustainable support for the Ukraine. We must do more. We don't see an end of this. We must do more. We must help the Ukrainians to defend themselves and to win this war. The international situation in this situation shows the shifting gravitation of international power. We are looking to Brazil, and we see what there is changing. These challenges for politics, especially for Germany, Europe, and NATO, are growing daily. The people in our country are acutely aware of this. In the ways regarding what concerns them most, the issue of the security ranks at the top. The theme of this conference precisely addresses this point. Answers are needed. My children are asking me every day, what do you do to solve this situation? Do you in us? Do you not in us? I have sometimes no answer, because my doubt about that, what we do, is not so small. I think we must do more, because looking to the future of our own children, we must be aware that the Ukrainians defend our security, our future, and our freedom. I would like to especially thank our closest ally, Estonia, for being a partner country for this conference. Many visits in Estonia in the past of my political life here in Berlin shows us that the Estonians are very close to Germany, and I hope the closest position of our bus, shoulder at shoulder, will we have a good future in a good future. Ambassador Lindner, we discussed last evening the strong connections between Estonia and Germany. Thank you once again. Putin's attack on Ukraine is, since more than 1,000 days, is the biggest threat for Germany, Europe, and NATO. The people of Ukraine are also defending our freedom. We must stand firmly and unequivocally with Ukraine. Yes, we must know freedom is not for free. That's a question for us. Are we adequately prepared? I say something no. When I mention the issue of comprehensive national defense and what it means for countries and municipalities, I often see shocked retreat. The turning point has not arrived everywhere, yet it happens every day. Putin is not waiting for our federal system to adapt to current realities or necessities. On the contrary, daily massive cyber attacks, we saw it perhaps yesterday, on our infrastructure up to sabotage through the political actions of the fifth columns in Germany, are aimed at destabilizing our society and our political system of liberal democracy. This threatens to shatter the core of Europe and NATO. With regard to the stability of Germany, we must think further. It involves the dimension of defense, capability and social security. Hannah Arendt said, 1967, only those who are free from want and fear can feel a passion for public freedom. That is also our mission. In this spirit, I wish us a fruitful conference and thank you for your attention.
Member of Parliament Wolfgang Hellmich, Mr. Congress President, thank you for your speech and your tour d'horizon, giving us the right direction, impetus for this conference. Thank you. We are coming, ladies and gentlemen, to the next point, to the official opening of the conference, and I'm happy to announce Dr. Tobias Lindner. Dr. Tobias Lindner has been appointed Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office in December 2021. His regional competence covers transatlantic relations, relations with Belarus, Moldova, Russia and Ukraine, the Asia-Pacific region, the Near and Middle East, and Latin America. He focuses on security policy issues and is committed to the further development of the rules-based international order, very important today, to the strengthening of the United Nations, and he advocates for a strong role for Germany in civilian crisis prevention, humanitarian assistance, and peace action. He also acted as deputy chairperson of the German-Canadian Parliamentary Friendship Group. Dr. Lindner, you have the word, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning to you all, Mr. Chairman, my dear colleague, ministers, state secretaries, excellencies, admirals, generals, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for making it to Berlin and especially to that venue, since we are all aware that if the rain starts in Berlin, usually the public order collapses, especially on the streets. So I'm happy to see this room crowded. 2 weeks ago, we entered something which I would call something like a new phase of government. We all have seen the results of the US elections, and they are crystal clear. And 1 day later, when I tried to get some sleep in the evening, our own government is subject to federal elections in February. And all of this comes at a time where we face significant challenges for our own security and defense here in Europe. Russia's war of aggression, 1000th day after the start of the full-scale invasion, we have to keep in mind what happened in 2014. It continues. It is clear that Russia will remain the greatest threat to our security in Europe and in the Euro-Atlantic area for the foreseeable future. Russia is heading towards totalitarianism, and its imperialism will not stop at Ukraine's borders. Putin himself announced this time and again in his speeches, Russia is preparing for a long-term conflict with plans to expand its war economy for years to come. A future security architecture needs to be directed against this Russian threat. And hybrid threats and actions against Europe are increasing. We have witnessed it yesterday with telecommunication cables being damaged at the same time, and although we do not have evidence or attribution yet, we all know how unlikely it is that two cables got damaged at the same moment. And we live in an intense systemic competition, both with Russia and China. With these massive challenges ahead of us, it is more important than ever to focus on important principles and efforts that should be guiding us for the times to come. First, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has deepened the transatlantic alliance and our collective understanding that credible deterrence requires the strengthening of our defense capabilities. NATO, under US leadership, has been the cornerstone of European security and a guarantor of security and freedom for the last 75 years. And Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is clearly showing us how valuable this is and that it cannot be taken for granted. And this is what motivated Finland and Sweden, formerly neutral or non-aligned countries, to join the alliance. Today, ladies and gentlemen, NATO is much stronger and more capable than it was 5 or 10 years ago, something that was very effectively demonstrated at the anniversary summit in Washington this July. And at the same time, there is no question that the US administration, and I believe this is true regardless of the outcomes of the elections, will expect us Europeans to assume more the responsibility than ever for our own security and defense, as it increasingly turns its attention to the Indo-Pacific. My country has already undertaken increased efforts to assume greater responsibility for our own security over the last decade. We've doubled our defense spending since 2014, spending now 2.12% of our GDP this year for defense. And let me be crystal clear, we are open to discuss more than 2% for defense spending at the next NATO summit in order to close capability gaps and further advance the implementation of the defense plans. We are working together, for instance, with Lithuania to deploy a full combat ready brigade. And we all know that in Estonia, we are participating in the Baltic air defense. And furthermore, we have launched initiatives to strengthen European burden sharing. We've launched the European Sky Shield initiative 2 years ago to strengthen European contributions to NATO's air and missile defense. And so far, 21 nations are already participating. Germany also initiated the European Long-Range Strike Approach, ELSA, in July of this year as a joint undertaking with France, Italy and Poland, open to others in order to develop, in reaction to Russia's respective military build-up, European deep strike capabilities, with the UK and Sweden joining the initiative only recently. And Germany will remain a close and reliable ally for the United States and within NATO. By announcing the beginning of episodic deployments of long-range fires to Germany in 2026, the United States have demonstrated its commitment to security in Europe. Second, ladies and gentlemen, we are fully aware that the European Union and its member states have to invest more in their own security. Let me also be clear, in full complementarity to NATO structures, capability targets and standards. Across all areas, we need to increase EU-NATO cooperation and increase standardization, interoperability and complementarity based on NATO's capability targets. Therefore, Germany fully supports strengthening the EU as an actor in common security and defense policy to enhance European security and defense readiness. The newly initiated EU rapid deployment capacity, to which Germany is substantially contributing with 1 out of 2 battle groups in 2025, will allow us to take a stronger responsibility for crisis management in our own neighborhood. And moreover, the European Union plays a central role in advancing military mobility to enable the swift movement of troops and material across our continent. Underlying these efforts, ladies and gentlemen, is the strengthening of the European defense industry. And therefore, the EU must play a very important role. In particular, financial incentives and regulatory measures can increase European armaments cooperation across research and development, joint management and procurement. This bolsters European defense capabilities and ensures standardization and interoperability, and it also creates economies of scale, reducing the cost of production and strengthening European industrial capacities and competitiveness. To this end, we are currently negotiating the European Defence Industry Programme, an EU regulation to incentivize such cooperation. This includes cooperation with the Ukrainian defence industry too, and it also aims at ensuring the availability and supply of defence products. We support further initiatives of the European Commission to increase defence investments and innovations in the European Union. And third, in Germany, in Europe, within NATO, at the G7, we stand in full solidarity with Ukraine's fight for freedom, and we will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes until it prevails. Our commitment to Ukraine is as much as a matter of principle as of our own core security interests, to be honest. Security's defense is the defense of our own freedom. And our support has manifested itself in manifold ways. In military equipment and training and economic assistance with 37 billion euro, Germany is the second largest supporter of Ukraine, militarily, economically, in the humanitarian field after the United States. 2 weeks ago in Kiev, my minister announced extra 200 million euro of humanitarian assistance to winter support. And Germany helps Ukraine to pursue its path towards full Euro-Atlantic integration. We will continue to uphold Ukraine's air defense, both through our immediate action on air defense initiative and by providing additional assets to Ukraine on a bilateral basis. We will continue training Ukrainian soldiers as part of the successful training mission EU MAM Ukraine that has just been extended for another 2 years. The sanctions that have been imposed by the European Union are weakening Russia's economic base and are curtailing its ability to wage war. And the close alignment of sanctions measures among G7 partners is pivotal for constraining Russia's ability to continue this war indefinitely. We are committed to continue our support in order to bring Ukraine into a position of strength. Ukraine's and our own security in Europe are interlinked. We, as Europeans, we have to do more. We underpin our expectation that any discussion on the future of Ukraine cannot be negotiated without Ukraine, without Europe, and quite frankly, not without the United States. We have increased our own resilience in Germany against hybrid threats below the threshold of military warfare. We completely ended energy dependence from Russia. We have become more resilient against hybrid threats and disinformation originating from the territories of and in part state-sponsored by Russia as well as China. And together with the European Union and supported by NATO, we have publicly attributed a cyber attack against one of our own major political parties. We started to publicly attribute cyber attacks because we are convinced that when attacking states know that their actions can be uncovered and will have consequences, the threshold for further future attacks is significantly raised. And furthermore, we have not only fostered our own capacities to detect and deter disinformation campaigns, we have also established a close-knit network of dialogue and exchange of insights and expertise with our partners, especially within the EU and the G7. And as disinformation usually targets the public, the best protection against it is transparent and fact-based information, which is the fundament of our strategic communication. Ladies and gentlemen, looking at all of this, I can say that we are in the middle of a marathon. And I'm not going to lie. Adapting to the current security environment is going to be hard sometimes, as a marathon usually in the middle is. An effective response to the challenges is going to demand effort from each and every one of us, not only government action, but also parliament, private sector, civil society, and individuals. And these efforts have not just started today or with the outcome of the elections in the United States. Our general approach has been described in the National Security Strategy, pursuing a policy of integrated security, further increasing our robustness and resilience and acting in a sustainable way. We have made noticeable progress over the recent years, but our efforts must continue. In everything we do during the coming months and probably years, we have to be conscious of, to quote, the return of war in Europe, unquote, as stated in the EU strategic compass. With Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine and its persistent attempts to undermine the rules-based international order, Europe is confronted with existential challenges. When all of our lives have become less secure, we have to put it all the efforts necessary to strengthen our deterrence, defense capability and resilience. So security is the center of our endeavors now. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we will continue to work on, nationally within the European Union, with our allies and partners in NATO, especially with the United States, the G7 and beyond, and also by continuing our support for Ukraine. So let me close by thanking you for your attention, looking forward to this distinguished conference and welcoming you again to Berlin. And my special thanks goes to our Estonian friends as the partner nation of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, State Minister Dr. Lindner, for your speech, and we will have later opportunity to discuss, I think. But however, the Republic of Estonia is our partner nation this year, and I'm very grateful that the Secretary General in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Mr. Jonatan Vseviov, I hope I did it right, will open our conference. Sir, I would like to welcome you, and please allow me to swiftly introduce you. Your background includes a range of magnificent positions within Estonia's Ministry of Defense, where you have played a key role in shaping defense policy, particularly in response to regional security challenges. You also have served as the Estonian ambassador to the United States, strengthening transatlantic ties. A graduate of the University of Tartu, you are holding a degree in political science and furthered your education at the Baltic Defense College. Known for your strategic insights into NATO and European defense matters, you frequently represent Estonia in high-level diplomatic discussions. So one impressive sentence on X was, "Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, nothing about Europe without Europe." I think this is an excellent introduction to your opening. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure and indeed an honor not only to speak here today to open this outstanding conference, but to be the partnering nation to this conference. It is also a pleasure for myself personally to be back in Europe, back in Berlin, after a fairly lengthy trip to East Asia, discussing the issues that we will be discussing here today. Berlin is the heart of Europe. It is the city that symbolizes peace and freedom on this continent like no other city. And it is the city geographically as close to the fighting in the east of Ukraine as Tallinn, Estonia is. Roughly the same amount of distance between Berlin and the eastern front lines in Ukraine and Tallinn and the eastern front lines in Ukraine. I also want to thank Behördenspiegel for organizing this event. I'm looking forward to the discussion later on with Dr. Lindner and the event itself that promises to be not only intellectually stimulating, but also providing us with the intellectual ammunition needed to survive the difficult days ahead. Now I'm in a bit of a difficulty because I listened closely to Dr. Lindner's speech and he gave my speech. It's quite unusual for you to come up to the stage after listening closely to the speaker before you without disagreeing with anything. Minor details here and there. He obviously outlined Germany's defense budget being above 2% of Germany's GDP. Estonia's defense budget is above 3% of our GDP, so a minor difference. I represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not the Ministry of Defense. This is not all good news for us. But all joking aside, he talked about Germany's openness to discussing the raising of NATO's agreed-upon minimal defense spending recommendation. That is our position. we are also open to discussing the raising of NATO's minimum defense spending recommendation. All of the aspects of Germany's policy towards the war in Ukraine that Dr. Lindner outlined, I subscribe to. So instead of giving you the same speech that you just heard, I refer you back to his words and undersign my own name and offer you just a few thoughts to give a bit of context to why Estonia has reached the conclusions that clearly Dr. Lindner also has reached. So first, it's been said time and again that this is a consequential war. It is. 1,000 days of fighting. It's a long war. Its magnitude is unlike anything we've seen in Europe since 1945. But there was war before 2022. The Russians invaded in 2014, annexed Crimea. The war in the Donbass had lasted for years before February 24th of 2022. And before Crimea and the Donbass, there was obviously Georgia, 2008. Look at Europe's history in the post-Cold War era, and war follows war. It is obviously true that what started on February 24th of 2022 is greater on the scale of magnitude, but that's not the only reason why this war is so consequential. Before, when the Russians invaded, they kept masks on. It was the little green men that went into Crimea. It was unsure who started 2008 in Georgia. Perhaps it was the Georgians starting before the Russians had to intervene. In the run-up to February 24th, 2022, the United States and the United Kingdom made their intelligence public. President Biden famously went on TV, said, "We know what you're planning. Don't do it. Don't do it." And nevertheless, he went ahead and did it. Aggression as clear-cut as aggression can be. No hiding it, no explaining it away. So one day this war will be over. As all wars, this war too will be followed by peace. And when this war is over, we will find out whether or not aggression as a tool of statecraft succeeded. No hiding the fact that he's committing the crime of aggression. It will either succeed or it will fail, informing future aggressors, not just in Europe, but around the world. When this war is over, we will find out whether the changing of borders through military force was possible or not. An issue of global importance. Look at the map of the world. Look at the borders. Most of the borders on this planet derive their legitimacy not from historical or cultural, political reasons. They derive their legitimacy from the fact that they are internationally recognized. And here we have internationally recognized borders being violated in an outright aggression. Provinces of one country being annexed by another. This will either stand and succeed, or this will fail, having global consequences. And sovereignty as the cornerstone of international life, the building block upon which we've built not just Estonia's and Germany's security, but security around the world. Sovereignty is either a concept that is alive or an empty phrase in outdated treaties. If we allow ourselves to go back to an era where the so-called great powers of the world came together and decided over the heads of the smaller countries what their domestic and foreign policy choices ought to be, then we're reopening a Pandora's box we Europeans know perfectly well not to reopen. A consequential war. Consequential. For Europe's security, but also for international security writ large. Now, I also want to underline that we assess with absolute certainty that Vladimir Putin has not changed his goals. The goals he had when he went in on February 24th, 2022 are the same goals he has today. He's had to moderate the timelines. His plan A didn't work. He expected a quick victory militarily in Ukraine and then a renegotiated European security architecture that he would have negotiated from a position of strength. That obviously failed, but he hasn't changed his goals. Furthermore, he thinks he can win. There's some who argue that he's already lost. He hasn't achieved what he set out to achieve. Well, he hasn't achieved what he set out to achieve yet. He intends to win. What is it that he wants? Well, he's been shockingly transparent about his goals. He's given speeches about it, written articles. He wants all of Ukraine. This is not a war for a few provinces of Ukraine. He needs to dominate Ukraine, and for reasons that are too lengthy for me to go into or get into here today, he thinks that an independent, sovereign, European, democratic Ukraine is an existential danger to the idea of Russia that he wants to promote. All of it, all of Ukraine. And secondly, a fundamentally reshaped European security architecture, which, as he himself put it, with NATO military activities pushed back to pre-1997 borders, effectively creating a buffer zone in Central and Eastern Europe that would consist of my country. Clearly not something that is compatible with the view that we have of contemporary Europe. Clearly not compatible. So let me make it absolutely clear. Our goal in this war is peace. It hasn't changed. The goal is the same, just like Putin's. A just and lasting peace based on international law, Ukraine's sovereignty, and obviously territorial integrity. Now, for us to achieve that peace, we need to recognize that in the company of an aggressor, peace is not the natural state of affairs. It has to be fought for. It has to be fought for. And today, the Ukrainians are the ones doing the fighting, and we're in the position of supporting them. We need to continue raising the cost of this aggression on the Russians through sanctions and other measures. And we need to keep supporting Ukraine with military assistance, with everything they need. Economic assistance, humanitarian assistance, reconstruction of Ukraine's energy infrastructure and Ukraine's cities, and obviously also political support, because we need to be aware of the fact that when Russia sends its missiles and drones deep into Ukraine, hitting cities far from the front lines, they are not targeting Ukraine's infrastructure. They're obviously not targeting Ukraine's military capabilities. They are targeting the hope of the Ukrainian people that they too can one day live a European future. This is what it's all about. So if Russia is in the business of destroying hope, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be in the business of delivering hope. Hope is a resource, more important than any missile system or tank or fighter plane. So let us continue delivering this hope. Hope that one day the Ukrainian people too can enjoy the same level of security, prosperity and stability that we here in Europe today can enjoy. It can be done. It can be done. It's been done before. The 100 million Central and Eastern Europeans who found themselves on the wrong side of the wall once the Second World War ended made the incredible journey of coming from almost nothing to joining the European Union and NATO in 10, 12, 14 short years, depending on the country. Bringing prosperity, stability, and security to those 100 million Central and Eastern Europeans, including to my own country. Now, had that process not been led, had that process not been successful, one can only imagine the chaos that my country and others in Central and Eastern Europe would be going through today. Chaos that surely would have undermined our security and well-being, but obviously also affected the security, stability, and well-being of the whole of Europe. But history didn't end. And there are those in Europe, and there are those that clearly object to this idea of a Europe that is based on democracy and free market economy. And that's what the Ukrainians are fighting for. So how do you provide them with the hope? Well, you demonstrate that you're not only talking the talk, but also walking the walk. The debates we're having regarding weapon systems, whether or not to give them, are obviously important in terms of the practical military utility of the weapon systems we're debating. But we also need to keep in mind that every time someone says no to a weapon system, we're not just taking that weapon system off the table, taking a little bit of hope away. We're communicating that we have not yet reached the point of no return, that we are holding back, that although one foot is on the gas pedal, the other one is on the brake pedal. Now this is us communicating, not only with Vladimir Putin, who is listening, we are communicating with the families spending their nights in basements, as far from here as Tallinn is from there, spending their nights in basements. So let's keep this in mind when undertaking these debates, and let us recognize hope as resource that it is. So we need to raise the cost of aggression. We need to continue supporting Ukraine with material and immaterial assistance alike. And most importantly, we need to prove to Vladimir Putin and those who keep him and his policies around that no, time is not on his side, that we have staying power. Now, some argue that this war is costly on us, tiring even. What an outrageous statement to make. The ones who might have justification for making this argument are the Ukrainians, not us. Estonia has publicly proclaimed that if our military assistance to Ukraine were at the level of 0.25% of GDP, we could succeed in a war of attrition against the Russians. We could out-attribute the Russians. 0.25%. 0. something something. Talking about small numbers. Furthermore, this narrative of tiredness is flawed because it rests on the assumption that once this war is over, that we'll be able to somehow go back to the good old days, go back to enjoying the peace dividend, go back to the era where history had ended. That's not going to be the case. History never ended, even though in some corners of Europe it might have seemed that it had. It never does. Assume the best case scenario happens. Ukraine succeeds, aggression fails. We manage to push Putin to change his goals and then come out of this through a perhaps lengthy negotiated process, but with a just and lasting peace, with Ukraine's long-term economic, political, and security future guaranteed. Will history end? Is the Middle East going to solve itself? Is Russia going to disappear? Are the challenges posed by new global powers going to somehow become less challenging? No, no, no. History never ends. The 21st century has truly begun. It is going to be a challenging century. The choice that we have to make is whether we want to approach the challenge of the 21st century from a position of having defended the most basic of principles that we've proclaimed to defend, or after having failed to defend those principles in our very backyard. My suggestion would be to enter the 21st century from a position of strength, after having defended those principles. It's not going to be an easy century, but certainly easier for us to handle than compared to the alternative. Furthermore, we need to be aware of the fact that winning the peace is not going to be much easier than winning the war. A Ukraine that emerges from this war is going to be a Ukraine devastated by this war. We know, as Europeans, how difficult winning the peace is, especially here in Berlin. We know from our own history. Once this war is over, thousands and thousands of Ukrainians will be returning from the front lines, seeing themselves not just as saviors of freedom in Ukraine, but indeed saviors of Europe. They will be returning to cities with no electricity, and they will be expecting a European lifestyle that we know will take time for them to reach. We're going to have a Ukraine that still has Russia on its borders, a Russia that has significantly more military might than Ukraine, even after the cessation of hostilities, a Russia that might be revanchist against Ukraine. We're going to have to win the peace, and that is not going to be easy or cheap or in any way a smooth ride. So for all those who want to focus on how tiring winning this is, I suggest to take a break, get out of the kitchen, let those run the show who understand that this indeed is a marathon, not a sprint. Finally, I want to say a few words about Germany, a close ally of ours. I'm sure many have heard numerous Estonians giving speeches on how we want more Germany. More. I'm sure it must agitate many in the German decision-making process. Whenever an Eastern European opens his mouth or her mouth, they talk about more money for defense. They talk about more German assistance to Ukraine, demanding for more economic presence in our region. We're asking for more Germany. More Germany. Dear German friends, there could not be a greater compliment to you and your democracy than to have Eastern Europeans come to Berlin and demand for more Germany. Consider who's speaking. Consider our history. This is as big a compliment as anyone can give you. We trust you. We need you. We want you to play the role that only you can play. No, not dominating Europe, but leading Europe, bringing Europe together, understanding that the idea of Europe is not a given, it is constantly being challenged, and currently being challenged by the Russians in Ukraine. Do not defend our Estonian ideals or our Estonian goals. Defend your ideals and your goals and take a compliment. We want more Germany. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your tremendous and very impressive words and introductory remarks. We are very glad for your speech. I would like now State Minister and Secretary General Vseviov come up to the podium, where Dr. Proll will now lead the discussion interview, and we will also have microphones here in the audience for Q&A by you, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Proll, you have it.
Yeah, dear State Secretary Vseviov, dear State Minister Dr. Lindner, thank you very much for your initial keynotes. I'm very grateful for those, and we will now have 30 minutes time to cover questions and answers, and this was also planned with the audience. So Mr. Wolski already mentioned microphones in the two ways. If you have, ladies and gentlemen, questions, then please name your name and your institution or organization, and please keep it short, so no statement questions, please. But to initiate our dialogue, gentlemen, let me ask the first question initially. Mr. Vseviov, the white elephant. Mr. Lindner already mentioned, how do you see the effects of the presidential elections in the US upon Europe politically? Your nation is a front state, and the defense, according to Article 5, is all our obligation, and we're happy and grateful to stick to it. But what about the US now?
What a good question. I'll have three things to say about this. So first of all, to all those who act surprised, I asked, have you been paying attention? Donald Trump won, I think he won roughly 70 million votes in 2016. He won the presidency. Yes, American elections tend to be close, but he won. And we've already had 4 years of President Trump in the White House. Then he lost in 2020, winning roughly 70 million votes, and now he won with, I think, approximately 76 million votes. You don't need to be a US expert to understand that there is something there that is bigger than just one election or electoral cycle. So this is the United States that we have, the United States that we are aligned with, and the United States that we need to work with. Now, paradoxically, the things that we as Europeans need to do to safeguard ourselves against the potential US turning its attention elsewhere are the same things we as Europeans would have to do to keep the United States here. Spend more on defense, demonstrate that we have our act together, be self-confident, stand on our own 2 feet, be able to deliver security, not just consume it. The same things. So when we're talking about going above 2% of GDP for defense as a NATO minimum, when we talk about capability development, when we talk about the importance of contributing towards Ukraine's victory, we're also talking about sustaining the transatlantic relationship. And final thing I want to say about this is that the worst suggestion anyone can give you is to panic, hyperventilate, and worry. Let's not. Let's take it easy. Let's deal with the problems once they arise. There will be issues where we disagree with any American president. There will be issues where we strongly agree. At the end of the day, I feel passionately, Europe and the United States share the same challenges, share the most fundamental of values, and share an interest in a functioning rules-based international order. And thus will stay aligned no matter who's in the White House or who is in the government, either here in Germany or in Estonia.
But does that fit to what you have mentioned in your speech? So history has never ended. No conflict is going to be solved by its own, and it's a difficult century.
Well, look, if for some reason the United States were to contribute less to European security, then it just simply means that we Europeans would have to contribute more. It's a matter of resources. Should they act surprised when this were to happen? I don't think so. We've been talking about the need to contribute towards our own security for quite some time now, and we need to do that, not because of Donald Trump, but because of Vladimir Putin. He's the main salesperson for NATO, and the main argument why we need a defense establishment in the first place.
Dr. Lindner, you also have served diplomatically in the United States. How do you assess the course of action of the US in the future?
I can only echo what my Estonian colleague said. First of all, you know, when elections happen, they can always have different outcomes, but on the other hand, this result came not by surprise, and it did not come unexpected or unprepared for us. So my main message would be, this time is different than 2016 for 3 reasons. First of all, Donald Trump already served 1 presidency in the White House. So he's, I would say, more clear how to use the administration to pursue his policy. His policy is getting more sharp. I would even expect more predictable in some way, even though there will be issues on which we fundamentally will disagree. Second, this is a different Europe than 2016. It's a different Germany. Now we are above 2% defense spending. We do not, if you look, for example, in the parliament, we have 4 parties, including the biggest opposition party, that are fully committed to spend more than 2%. We might have disagreements about the instrument, how to finance it, but not about the objective. Second, we have set up a national security strategy and a China strategy. So, for instance, we have made a tough decision as Germans on 5G, which many didn't expect. We have fully decoupled with respect to fossil fuels and especially to the Nord Stream pipelines from Russia. So we are also different. And last but not least, we as Europeans are better prepared. We have, at the day when Trump was elected and when we sent our congratulations to him, we made clear that we are approaching the new US administration in a constructive setup, in a constructive manner. We are convinced that we are able to convince them that it's a mutual benefit for both to have transatlantic ties, especially when the focus of the US goes more and more to the Indo-Pacific they need allies, they need partners on the other side of the Atlantic. So long story short, there might be challenges, solve problems when they arise, but we are prepared and we will not pursue a policy of, I would say, a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to those problems.
Thank you very much. I think we have a question from the audience. Is this a question? Yeah, can you please go to the microphone? Yeah, you're next to the microphone, so maybe you step just a few steps forward. And then you please go to the microphone. You can start. Yes.
121. Yeah. Erik Rusch from the news media Epoch Times. The German government assumes that China is providing drone assistance to Russia for the war in Ukraine. This must and will have consequences, said Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock yesterday. Is it now confirmed that China is supporting Russia militarily? And what consequences could this have for German policy towards China?
Yeah, of course.
So I need to be very brief on that. First of all, you know, my minister only makes a public statement if we have enough evidence to clearly state that we know that China is providing also drones, not only dual-use goods, but drones to Russia. And as my minister said, this needs to have consequences. These consequences are now debated within the European Union. I think you are fully aware that when it comes to sanctions, be it economically, be it listings, be it other sanctions, there always needs to be a consensus of the EU 27. We cannot do it alone on a national basis, but we are crystal clear on that we are pursuing within the European Union now some consequences on the matter of that fact.
Thank you. If you have a question, please don't raise your hand. Go to the microphone. So we have another question at the microphone on the right-hand side. Please go on.
Good morning. Thank you for very good speeches. I'm Riho Terras, member of European Parliament, Defense Committee, hopefully soon a full-fledged committee. And I have a question about public opinion, because as we know, politicians mainly do what the public wants them to do. And it is no surprise that in Estonia or in Poland or other Eastern European countries, it's easy for the politicians to talk about increasing defense expenditures if you have a neighbor like we do. But I see that in Leipzig or Dresden or elsewhere, we have really difficulties with the public opinion where the people rather are supporting Putin than are against him. And what can be done to make that a bit changed, and whether a phone call with the war criminal Putin helps or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terras. Mr. Vseviov, you have mentioned not talking the talk, but walking the walk.
Well, the member of European Parliament made reference to German public opinion, so I'm sure the question was really addressed to Dr. Lindner, but I'm happy to answer. And good to see you, Riho, former Estonian Chief of Defense, by the way, for those who don't know. Yes, politicians may follow public opinion, but leaders lead. Leaders lead. And for us to convince people to do anything that is difficult, we need to be able to clearly articulate the consequences of inaction. And that is something that I think where we have room for improvement. The consequences of inaction need to be understood. And it's also true in our everyday lives. No sane human being would ever allow a stranger to stick a knife in you unless you understood that your appendix is about to burst and that you need to undertake or undergo this operation. And then you accept the logic. You allow the doctor to stick a knife in you. You need to trust the person communicating with you. You need to understand the consequence of inaction. I'm sometimes concerned that when we talk about this war and use slogans like "for as long as it takes" and Putin hasn't changed his goals, without really explaining what his goals are, what the consequence of Ukraine losing would be, not just for the Ukrainians, but for us. That we are making it harder for leaders to lead and also making it harder for people to understand the consequences. So what can I say? Better articulation, better explanations.
So 3 quick points. Let me start with the phone call. And those who know me know that I'm not the advocate or the press liaison officer of the Chancellor. You know, it was his decision who to call at what time. But I can only give us all the advice to lower our blood pressure a little bit on that phone call, because you have spoken about Leipzig, you have spoken about Dresden. I meet very often people who ask me, is it really true that Putin does not want to negotiate? It's you who are not speaking and reaching out to him. And I can only say what the Chancellor and the Chancellery said after the phone call. Unfortunately, Putin didn't change his mind to the last call 2 years ago. So it proved the contrary. It's not us who are not willing to end this war. Putin can end this war immediately by withdrawing his troops, by stopping the fighting. It's not us. And that would be my answer to the people you mentioned and to the German public. We have to make clear that, first of all, we are defending Ukraine for sure for reasons of solidarity, for sure to stand on the right side of history, but also because it's in our own national security interest. If borders can be alternated by using force in this century, it's a danger for peace and security in Europe, and therefore Ukraine must win this war in the end. And second, to quote a former NATO Secretary General, the purpose of deterrence is not provoking a war, it's preventing a war. And we need to explain it more carefully, more in detail, maybe that for sure. But I would advise to everyone who seeks peace and who wants to preserve peace that we need to be able to deter.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have 2 other questions on the right-hand side. Yeah, please tell us your name, your institution, and keep it short. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Rudolf Rentschler. I'm here from ESTA. Moreover, I'm a German liberal, and I'm the secretary of the liberal group in the OSZE Assembly. My question is, there was spoken about the rise of the defense budget, about even 2% of the GDP. Question, where do you get the money from? France is bankrupt, Italy is bankrupt, and Germany has not more money because of the money the last government clashed. If you are asking for an emergency case for Ukraine, then this is for weapons for Ukraine, but not for general defense budget. Where to get the money from? Do you want to raise the taxes, for instance, for rich or middle-class people? The SPD says just 1%, just more taxes for the highest, biggest, the richest 1%. This is far not enough. In this case, you have to raise a lot of taxes. Would you like to do this, or would you like to cut in social expenses? Nobody knows where do you get the money from.
Thank you.
So first of all, Mr. Rentschler, with all my due respect, I have to disagree on the matter of fact that the last German government collapsed due to an issue of the money. I was serving by myself for more than 10 years in the budget committee of the German parliament. And I can tell you, if there would have been a will from all the 3 political parties, there would have been a solution. The matter of fact is, as you have seen in the media, that the government collapsed because one party wanted to leave the government. I have respect for that, but we should state it out clearly. Second, where do we get the money from? We will not defend Europe if Putin attacks by standing at our borderlines and showing tabloids with the Schuldenbremse, with the debt ceiling of our constitution. That will not work out, I'm convinced. To be honest. And second, that does not imply that we can only do the increase of our defense spending, which is totally necessary, just by raising the public debt. That will also not work out. But it might be worked out sometimes partially. We have set up the Sondervermögen, the Special Procurement Fund. And that was a great idea and that was a great achievement. And on the other hand, we have to review the budget. My message to the German people is that you cannot set new priorities, be it, for instance, on climate action or be it on defense, without having any influence to your daily way of life. that will not work out. To tell the people that we have new priorities and new necessities, but life can stay as it is, will not work out. And we should be as honest as we could be during the upcoming campaign for the next German parliament.
And just very briefly, our defense budget went from 2+% of GDP to 3.4% of GDP. So obviously a major increase. We raised taxes and we cut costs. That's the way we did it. Did the government fall? No. Did the government lose its popularity? Well, if at all, then because they're being criticized for not doing enough for defense. You need to understand the consequences of inaction. Freedom is not free. What we are spending on defense today pales in comparison to what we would have to spend if we were to lose Ukraine and be confronted with a resurgent Russian empire in the middle of Europe.
Thank you very much. We have now another question, but I think the young...
Yes, me, thank you.
Yeah, so please come to the microphone.
My name is Leon Deuser, and I'm from the Security Policy Student Group. And my question is about cooperation with states of the so-called Global South. For example, Central Asia, very important strategical region. How you want to prevent that this region is going to get completely under China's and Russia's influence? Thank you.
So first of all, I'm trying to avoid the phrase Global South, because if there is a so-called Global South, then there are others, then there are we, and here are the others, and that's exactly the wrong attitude, the wrong approach. So what you do that they do not get under the influence of others is by strengthening our own ties, by offering our own cooperation. That's what we, for instance, pursuing. I'll give you a few examples with our China strategy, where we clearly said we want to diversify our economic relations, both on the supply chain side as well as on the export and investment market side. Or I'll give you another example, be it on defense. Germany is pursuing an observer status in the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, which I believe is a big and necessary achievement. What we see is you need to care about those countries and you need to take care about their issues, and you need to treat their issues and their demands seriously. If we do it, we have a chance, we can offer an alternative, but by just going out with the attitude, don't play with the bad guys, we will not succeed.
I obviously agree with the point that we need to listen to what other countries around the world want and how they see the world. I also agree with the uselessness of the term Global South. We're talking about a diverse group of countries with very diverse viewpoints. Now, in addition to listening, we also need to be able to speak with a clearer voice. This war for us is existential. That's what Estonian leaders have said, and I think I've heard many other European leaders use the same word, also the leaders of the European Union. We, as the European Union, are the #1 development assistance provider around the world. We're amongst the top trading partners for the majority of the countries on this planet. We are a major diplomatic force. My question is, are we sure we're using the different levers of our national power effectively in order to get countries to understand what it is that we want them to do? We're not asking for much. We're not asking for much. We're asking for countries to not help the aggressor that's undermining international law and the international rules-based order. We can handle the military assistance, we can handle the reconstruction, I think we can handle the humanitarian assistance. All we want is for them to not help in circumvention of sanctions or in legitimizing the aggressor. It's not a big ask. And we can bring a lot to the table to convince countries to follow. There's a lot that we can do to get better at using the levers that we already have in a coordinated manner, in a truly, if you want, geopolitical manner.
Thank you very much. We have another question from the audience, but there's a young girl asking the question, so maybe I'm sure you're all gentlemen, so please can we hear the girl? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Christina. I'm a business student from Vienna, and I will impolitely ask 2 questions. First, assuming that Trump's meant means that he's going to end the war very shortly, how can he possibly do that? Is there some resource capability the public is not aware yet? And secondly, what can be a strong enough guarantee, not only for Ukraine, but also for Eastern Europe, that Putin will not do again what he has done? Thank you.
Whom of you may start?
So I don't think there's a magic formula. And frankly, I don't think that what President-elect and former President Trump is talking about is illogical. In order for us to achieve peace, we need to put Ukraine and ourselves in a position of strength. We need to put ourselves in a position of strength. We also need to understand that the peace that we will get out of this, we will own. The ones who are in power will own this peace. Neville Chamberlain came to Munich, went back home with peace for Europe. He owned it. That peace lasted for how long? A few weeks, a few months? So what I think we want, and where we have a total harmony of interests with the United States, is that we want peace, but we want that peace to be lasting. We want the peace to be lasting. So how shall we go about creating that sort of a peace? Well, first you need to put Ukraine in a position of strength. You need to convince Putin to give up his goals or alter them, change them. Then we need to come up with a security construct that would guarantee Ukraine's security for the long term, an economic construct guaranteeing Ukraine's economic well-being for the long term, and a political construct guaranteeing Ukraine's political stability for the long term. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. Those constructs exist in Europe. They're called NATO and the European Union. Now, it's easier said than done, because NATO membership in of itself doesn't guarantee anything. For NATO to guarantee something, you need to build a truly coherent deterrence posture. Took us in the Baltic states, I would say, 10 years to build up deterrence in our region after joining the alliance. So obviously in Ukraine's case, it would have to be faster, it would have to be tailored, it would have to be tailored not only for their different geographic circumstances, but for their different geopolitical circumstances. We share the goal of ending this war on day one of President Trump's presidency. I think it's up to President Putin, however, to allow us to reach that goal.
Just since I agree to everything my colleague said, just a few words. First of all, I'm a humble state minister, not a magician who is able to predict the future. But it's crystal clear that we also need to make clear to Washington that any negotiated outcome needs to be based on the international rules-based order, especially the UN Charter, and as you said, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine in the end. And we have own interests. Second, since another question referred to drones from China to Russia, it's crystal clear that we cannot separate those two theaters. So if the US administration is interested in having a focus on the Indo-Pacific, it cannot be separated from Russia's behavior or by any kind of appeasement policy with Russia. And I believe that's one of the most important arguments.
Thank you very much. We have one last question from the right-hand side, and then we go to the left side.
Thank you very much. Klaus Olshausen, former general of the Bundeswehr. We are always talking about as long as it takes. When do we decide whatever it takes? And can we agree and can we convince our population that the fight in Ukraine is a forward defense of a free Europe?
At least that's what we are trying to do every day. Sometimes we do better, sometimes we do worse. I believe it's possible to convince the public. And even if you look at, especially now on the German public and other opinion polls, for sure there was a decrease over the last 2.5 years of the public support for our policy when it comes to supporting Ukraine. But there is still a majority left. So what I mean by that is, don't put yourself into some self-fulfilling prophecy or speaking about that everything is bad. I'm highly optimistic that we can sustain this course with public support, and let's do it, and let's do it on a daily basis, trying to convince the public.
Yes, I think we've been trying to do that, and as Estonia, we've tried to also demonstrate that military assistance to Ukraine will not lead to uncontrolled escalation the next day. We started providing lethal assistance before February 24th. Our javelins were amongst the first ones to reach Ukraine. We also have tried to demonstrate that we are willing to accept risk in order to help Ukraine defend European security. We've provided Ukraine with significant amounts of military assistance. There was a time when we delivered all of our towed 155mm howitzers to Ukraine, demonstrating that if we're willing to accept a certain level of risk as a frontline state, then surely those further from the borders can accept those risks as well. Because as you said correctly, what is at stake here is not just Ukraine's security, but the security of Europe. Now, I think it's also fair to say that we as Europeans, we have been moving in the right direction. It's taken us time. You remember, in the early days, there was a debate as to whether lethal assistance should be provided in general. There was a debate as to whether Western-made lethal assistance should be provided. The memoirs that will be written in a few years' time, detailing the difficulties our defense bureaucracies had with, hiding the fact that certain pieces of equipment were actually coming from the West, trying to pretend that these were, Soviet-made weapon systems. These are going to be enormously interesting stories to read. So then we had this debate on the tanks, and then the F-16s, and now on the long-range missiles. Every time there's been this debate, there have been those who say an absolute no, and they usually base their argumentation on a fear of escalation or uncontrolled escalation. There's a lengthy debate. We're open democracies. Much of this is in the public domain, and then eventually we make the decision and say, okay, we'll do it, and World War III does not begin. And then time and again, we repeat the same cycle. Now, I take comfort in the fact that we've always, for the almost three years of war now, at the end of the day, reached the right conclusion. And after saying no 9 times, the 10th time we answer with a yes. That's good. My concern is, and the reason why I'm worried here is that in time of war, time itself is not measured in minutes, days, and weeks alone. Time is measured in human lives. And every week we lost, every month we spent deliberating, the Ukrainians lost people. And not just soldiers on the front lines, by the way. The Ukrainians lost civilians. There will come a day when this war is over and all of us will have to answer for the decisions we made, for the time we lost. History will be the judge. And history will not show mercy to those who have wasted time in a time of war.
Thank you very much. So the 2 last questions from the audience, please. Yes?
Thank you. My name is Boyko Noev. I'm a former defense minister of Bulgaria and a former NATO ambassador. And I have 2 easy questions for the respected audience, for the panel. One to Dr. Lindner. Romania has given Ukraine one of its Patriot batteries. Bulgaria at one point has been a major contributor for large caliber munitions for Ukraine, up to 1/3 or more. Estonia has risen their budget to 3%. I'm not talking about the efforts of Poland and the other eastern flank countries. I've been here at this conference last year, and the Taurus was one of the main topics. Why, Dr. Lindner, did it take 1 year for Germany to take this decision? Why do we wait for the United States to lead the game again, while Germany and France and the UK, they have the weapon systems, And this has to be a European solution. I think that it's time for Europe to show leadership. And my second question or a comment is that we're not talking about the end game, land versus guarantees, etc., etc. In 1994, Ukraine was betrayed by the heads of state of the United States, France, UK, and tell me what was the fourth, and of course Russia. They were betrayed and they were compelled to surrender their nuclear weapons to Russia. How do you imagine the guarantees that we will be offering Ukraine in a future solution? Who would give the guarantees once the heads of state of those most powerful countries could not deliver? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the other question as well, please?
Good morning. My name is Dirk Berger. I'm assistant to Michael Gahler, the Foreign Affairs Coordinator of the EPP Group in the European Parliament. I would like to come back to the statement Mr. Lindner made to the commitment for further EU initiatives. I have to say, from a Brussels perspective, that seems kind of relative, considering that a group of member states already issued a statement before the proposal for EDIP, the defense industry program, was released, that they warned about an alleged power grab by the Commission. And also the ASAP regulation, the regulation to support ammunition production, was skipped of all its regulatory parts on initiative by the member states. These regulatory parts could have contributed to the 1 million delivery goal that we did not achieve. And on the other hand, it's also the element of financing. For the European Defence Industry Programme, we have 1.5 billion now, and estimated is the need for defence investment of 500 billion in the EU. And also the Council conclusions of May clearly stated noble and high ambitions for European defence, but at the same time mentioned on several points not to talk about the money. So I'm wondering how that would go together with the ambition to do more European and to support the Commission and their initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindner, would you like to start?
Okay, how many hours do we have? So first of all, send my best regards to your boss,
It's
Mr.
already
Gahler.
saying zero.
And, and I believe we need to discuss it in detail, but honestly, you know, that's the way how it sometimes unfortunately goes inside the European Union. In Germany we have the phrase bis hierhin und dann weiter, so until that line, and then we continue. And compared to 2 years ago, we have made significant progress. Can we do more? Can we be faster? Yes, for sure. Second, thanks for the Taurus question. I expected it. The simple answer why haven't we delivered the Taurus yet is because there is no consensus inside the government. You know the public statements of the Chancellor. Again, I'm not his press liaison officer. You know the opinion of my minister, of the foreign minister, of the vice chancellor. You know my own personal opinion. Should we have delivered the Taurus 1 year ago? Yes. Should we deliver it immediately? Yes, as quick as we can. I believe there's only one person in that war who is escalating, and that is Vladimir Putin and nothing else. And as my Estonian colleague said, history will be the biggest judge of what we did and what we didn't do.
So if I may, I'll briefly address the question of the credibility of our security guarantees. And I want to apologize for saying something that is obvious, especially to an audience consisting of military and strategic experts like yourselves. But I do understand that there are people watching online, so nevertheless, I will offer you my extremely simplified view on the matter. Our credibility on the international stage is not shaped by the things that we say. It's not even shaped by the things that we do. Our credibility is shaped by the results that we manage to achieve. It's the result that matters. Obviously, every failed initiative, every lost war, every broken promise undermines our credibility. This is another reason why the war in Ukraine is so consequential. This aggression is not hidden. It's outright. Putin isn't hiding the fact that he's committing aggression. We did not hide in the run-up to the war that we would oppose this aggression. We said that we're the ones upholding the international order. We're the ones upholding territorial integrity. This is where we draw the line, we said. Aggression shall not pass. The result of this war will determine not just Ukraine's future, not just European security architecture, but the credibility of everything that our leaders say on the international stage. So I cannot obviously say that the past few decades have been, for the West, a story of jumping from one success to another. Sure. But, you know, we deal with facts how they are. We try to build up that credibility again through the things that we say and through the things that we do, military posture being one of the important things that we do in communicating our intent and capability, but most importantly, the result that we're able to achieve. Let's not fool ourselves into believing that we'll be able to somehow hide our defeats away. We won't be able to do that. They will be open for everyone to see. So for people to start believing us again, or continue believing us, both those who are on our side and those who oppose us, we need to achieve the results we've proclaimed we're after. We need to achieve them, or face the consequences.
Dear State Minister, dear State Secretary, as you both have mentioned at the beginning, there's no leaf fitting between you, and it could have been the same speech. You also used the same picture, the picture of a marathon. I know this picture from the part of digitization, which Estonia has already ran successfully to stay in that picture, so the results matter. Also hoping that's not becoming like an Iron Man. So there's a difficult century you have mentioned. Thank you very much for this very political deep dive and your insights this morning. Thank you for being here.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming now to our first industry partners lecture, and I would like to introduce Dr. Martin Kaloudis. He has spent most of his career in the field of critical infrastructure management. He is currently Executive President, Vice President of Bechtle, Germany's largest IT system house. Prior to this, he was CEO and Chairman of the Board of the IT System House of the German Armed Forces. And before that, he worked for the German Railways for over 20 years in various positions. He has thus dedicated himself to major challenges with a technological focus. The BSc is therefore homecoming for him. Dr. Kaloudis holds a degree in applied mathematics and a PhD in business and economics. So we are looking for your foresights on digital transformation of warfare, resilience, and technological sovereignty. Sir, you have the floor.
Do I really have minus 5 minutes? No, 20 minutes, right? So 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you, General Wolski, for the friendly introduction, and thank you for the impressive speeches by my previous speakers, Secretary General Mr. Vseviov and Minister of State Dr. Lindner. Excellencies, ministers, state secretaries, members of the parliaments, generals, admirals, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it's a great honor for me to speak to you today. I would like to open my keynote by addressing the abbreviation VUCA, which may sound some worn out, to be honest. As many of you know, it is a term that has occupied us for more than 4 decades and challenges us to find our way in a world of volatility, of uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But to be honest, VUCA was just a kind of a theoretical term for me until February 22. I'm a civilian and I'm a technician, and therefore I have a general understanding of VUCA. In theory, I know what it means, I know what it is, but it had not entered my life as a perception or a daily companion, but only until February 2022. The already critical moment of Russia's horrible war against Ukraine, which gave rise to the often discussed Zeitenwende in Germany, was followed 20 months later by the terrible attack on Israel and the many conflicts that have followed. And today, 13 days ago, obviously not comparable, a new situation arose with a transatlantic alliance partner on the one hand and a broken coalition in Germany on the other. And an almost endless discussion, in my opinion, about the procedures and speed of the state's important basis to restore or at least maintain the ability to act. And some are already calling for a Zeitenwende 2.0, so a new era in our country. This is what our allies expect of us, and it is simply our duty to deliver. And the need for stability in our country, for the European Union, for NATO, and ultimately for the citizens of our states has hardly ever been greater than it is today. And it could be my personal fault or mistake that I'm so late. I have only felt that VUCA for 1,000 days, and now it has arrived in my real world, morning, noon, and night. But maybe one or the other of you feel the same way, and you describe yourself as a late follower like me, or better, a too late follower. So that morning, noon, and night VUCA seems to be our new world. In this, it is more important than ever to be able to rely on the tried and tested and the familiar. My colleague, Michael Guschelbauer, emphasized here last year, same date, same time slot, how crucial it is to strengthen the resilience and the performance of our ecosystem, and thus the IT systems, to meet the challenges of cyber attacks and digital threats effectively. I would like to build on that technological view today. In this context, allow me to draw your attention to a very remarkable newspaper article written by Professor Sönke Neitzel from the University of Potsdam and General Frank Leidenberger, head of the German Armed Forces IT System House, BWI, and Frank, in this role you are my successor. The article entitled, "Are We Experiencing a Revolution in War?" It was recently published in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung at about 8 weeks ago. It was, I think, the 1st of September this year. And the article impressively demonstrates how digitalization has fundamentally changed modern warfare. The article offers insights into the accelerated advancement of military technologies. It succeeds in building a didactically really fascinating bridge from the use of fighter planes in the war against the Ottoman Empire to today's highly technological worlds. UAVs, so unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, and digital systems now dominate the battlefield, much like aircrafts revolutionized the battlefield during the First and Second World War, and as we have heard before, history never stops. In Ukraine, we are observing how drones and satellite-based communication systems are facilitating precise real-time attacks and continuous monitoring of movements. These technologies have fundamentally changed the way wars are conducted and will continue to do so. And in my opinion, this is definitely not stoppable. The emerging transparent battlefield where the enemy has as much information as we do about the current situation leads the Deputy Chief of the German Air Force, General Lutz Kohlhaas, to state, "If you do not move, you will die," or in German, wer sich nicht bewegt, stirbt. The authors of the mentioned article nevertheless remind us that traditional military capabilities remain important. The conflicts in Gaza, in Lebanon, as well as certain aspects of the war in Ukraine demonstrate that classic military operations can also be conducted without comprehensive digital support. This fact challenges us to maintain the balance between technological progress and proven military tactics. When we talk about digitalization and technology, we are unavoidable. Come to the challenges of cyber resilience. This is not an isolated IT problem, but an integral part of national security strategies. The increasing professionalization and industrialization of cyber attackers and the rise of advanced persistent threats make it clear that we as a society, and especially in the defense sector, must continuously develop our capabilities to defend against and, in case of an attack, as we've seen yesterday by the cutted sea cables, recover from it. I've always been struck by the phrase, "Those who do not digitalize will lose." This quote comes from General Michael Vetter, the CIO of the German MOD, and it highlights the significance of digitalization also for ensuring cyber resilience. So again in German, as many of you know, wer nicht digitalisiert, verliert. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk about the role of Bechtle, or about partners like us. So you can swap the names as you want. Partners which are technology-driven, established economically and culturally, anchored in Europe and in Germany for decades, with the highest level of commitment to providing support on eye level. As a technology-agnostic partner, it's our mission to enable our customers to achieve technological freedom of choice. So in other words, our aim is to support you in your digitalization while reducing your dependencies. For us, a robust, resilient, and above all, adaptable IT architecture coupled with technological freedom of choice are essential characteristics of independency and technological sovereignty. We need to work together to ensure that these resilience characteristics and functions are built into our IT systems. So we have to fight for, or we have to work on resilience by design, on robustness by design, on sovereignty by design. It's our job to help our partners navigate the challenges that arise from balancing digital innovation with proven systems they know and trust. So security, robustness, and resilience are our top priorities. And sovereignty as a top priority is a value that is again increasing enormously right now. This is not only about implementing the latest edge innovations, improvements also, but it is also about creating long-term, sustainable, resilient solutions that our partners and customers can rely on in times of crisis, so in times of VUCA. This is also of critical importance in the context of the Zeitenwende. Frank Leidenberger and Sönke Neitzel also emphasize in their article the importance of close cooperation between industry, defense and politics as a prerequisite for digitalization, innovation, speed in implementation, speed in procurement, and creating synergies. I would like to explain this with a very simple example. Imagine the software development platform of BWI, so the German Armed Forces IT System House, is called Platform 42, and Bechtle's engineering software platform being used jointly for joint software development or activities around multi-cloud, artificial intelligence, automation, or quantum computing. So why not actually? I'm deeply convinced that the challenges we have to cope with can only overcome jointly. Or the other way around, the technological and security policy challenges in the future cannot be overcome without strong and trusting partnerships at eye level. partnerships between the players in defense industry, and in my case, IT industry. In order to respond effectively to new threats and drive technological advancement, it is essential to foster close cooperation and knowledge exchange. It's something about joint forces. Seamless, resilient collaboration between all relevant actors to ensure robust and resilient defense with a framework of multi-domain operations. Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a new era of warfare, shaped by digital technologies. Yet while we harness the advantages of digitalization, we must not lose sight of traditional military capabilities. It will be decisive to combine tradition and innovation to create a resilient and adaptable armed force that, as our Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius, puts it, is fit for war. Bechtle and I will continue to do everything we can to support the Bundeswehr and our NATO partners, as well as other security-relevant institutions with robust and modern IT solutions. We would also like to demonstrate this at our lunchtime forum together with our partner Google on the topic of multi-cloud enabler of the Zeitenwende. And together is a good keyword, so politics, defense industry and industry partners. And at the end, our friends, we will ensure that our country and our partners remain secure in a digitalized world and maintain its technological sovereignty. This is one basis for democracy. And, ladies and gentlemen, it is our duty to deliver their calling for Germany, as we've heard before. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish us a very interesting and successful conference. Thank you very much.
Ich lese sehr gerne die Epoch Times schon seit Jahren, weil ich mich da ausgesprochen gut unterrichtet fühle.
Die Ausgewogenheit in der Epoch Times, die ist sehr bemerkenswert.
An der Epoch Times schätze ich, dass sie einfach eine frische Perspektive auf die Dinge gibt, aber zugleich auch werteorientiert und traditionsbewusst im Sinne von wirklich professionellem, nüchternem, neutralem, wahrheitsorientiertem Journalismus ist.
An der Epoch Times imponiert mir, dass da insgesamt recht zahm aufgetreten wird und nur die Informationen gebracht werden und nicht gleich auf irgendjemanden drauf rumgehackt wird.
Ich kann bei der Epoch Times keinen Haltungsjournalismus feststellen, also konnte ich bisher noch nicht.
Das ist sehr angenehm für mich, dass ich da eine unabhängige Zeitung vor mir habe.
Viele Leser berichten, dass sie die Zeitung der Epoch Times sehr schätzen. Die ruhige und unaufgeregte Berichterstattung wird immer wieder als wohltuend erlebt. Ebenso, dass ohne parteipolitische Färbung über das Wesentliche informiert wird. Wir laden auch Sie dazu ein, einen größeren Überblick zu erhalten, ohne einer politischen Agenda zu unterliegen. Lehnen Sie sich zurück, erleben Sie Journalismus wie in guten alten Zeiten und lesen Sie jetzt den Unterschied.
Ja, es war morgens 5:45 Uhr. Ich stand hier auf der Terrasse in Sportkleidung. Vor mir, 1 Meter vor mir, explodierte eine Knallblendgranate. Kurz darauf eine weitere dort im Rosenbeet. Ja. Und im Bruchteil einer Sekunde war ich dann von 3 martialisch uniformierten SEK-Einsatzkräften umringt, mit vorgehaltener Maschinenpistole. Ich schaute in 3 Gewehrläufe.
Zeitgleich wurden bei allen 3 Vorständen des Vereins Bayern steht zusammen Landshut e.V. Durchsuchungen durchgeführt.
Und auf einmal kommen die da über diese Böschung rauf, wie im Krieg.
Also ich wusste nicht, dass man als Zeuge eine Hausdurchsuchung bekommt, aber scheinbar ist heutzutage alles möglich. Aber ich war froh, dass sie meine Haustüre ganz gelassen haben.
Ja, das sind Dinge, die mich persönlich sehr, sehr betroffen machen. Was ist los in unserem Land? Wo geht die Reise hin?
Die Ermittlungen wurden zwischenzeitlich abgeschlossen und Anklage zum Amtsgericht Landshut wegen des Tatverdachts des vorsätzlichen unerlaubten Besitzes einer Schusswaffe erhoben.
Gefunden hat man bei mir einen Paintball-Marker. ja, mit dem man Farbbeutel verschießt, ein Sportgerät und eine Softballpistole.
Auf der ganzen Welt schießen die Lebensmittelpreise in die Höhe und Politiker erklären das mit dem Klimawandel.
Der Klimawandel ist die größte Bedrohung.
Ihre Lösungsansätze werden Sie überraschen.
Es gibt 1900 essbare Insektenarten auf unserem Planeten.
Heute hat die Europäische Kommission Mehlwürmer offiziell als Lebensmittel eingestuft.
Ja, das ist die Zukunft. Die Entscheidungsträger haben festgestellt, dass wir durch die Umstellung unserer Ernährung auf Grillen, Ameisen und Mehlwürmer den Temperaturanstieg aufhalten, die Lebensmittelpreise senken und möglicherweise sogar den Planeten retten können.
Es geht nie um Innovation. Es geht nur darum, die Landwirte loszuwerden.
Agenda 21 sollte das Leitprinzip für das 21. Jahrhundert sein. Einige Ziele wie die Hungerbekämpfung klingen positiv und unbestritten. Doch erfordert das oft eine totale staatliche Macht, die schwer zu erreichen ist.
Ich glaube, es ist ein Betrug.
Vieles davon wurde in den frühen 1970er Jahren eingeführt. Jedoch wurden diese Gesetze missbraucht und manipuliert.
Der hier nicht mehr. Aber der hier, oder? Nein, auch kein Bauernhof mehr. All diese Leute haben also wegen der Regierungspolitik dicht gemacht?
Ja. Ich bin Landwirt in der 6. Generation.
Ich bin die 4. Generation. Seit wie vielen Jahren gehört Ihnen dieses Stück Land?
Seit 40 Jahren.
Ich glaube, wir sind die letzte Generation.
Die schließen die kleinen und mittleren Familienbetriebe.
Entweder wir besitzen Eigentum oder wir sind Eigentum.
Ich glaube, wir können der Regierung nicht mehr trauen, weil sie das Land haben will.
Und unsere Gründerväter verstanden, dass das Land unter den Menschen aufgeteilt wird, damit sie ihre Regierung immer kontrollieren können.
Im Moment haben sich die Kosten im ganzen Land verdreifacht. Und ich denke, dass die Lebensmittelpreise überall steigen werden.
Wurde irgendjemand für die Fehlentscheidungen zur Rechenschaft gezogen? Nein.
Wie jeder kommunistische Tyrann in den letzten 100 Jahren verstanden hat, Kontrolle über die Nahrung bedeutet Kontrolle über die Menschen.
Alles bricht zusammen. Es gibt eine Lebensmittelknappheit.
Eine Welternährungskrise, wie immer wieder zu hören ist.
Gibt es noch Hoffnung für diese Situation?
Wir müssen weiter dafür kämpfen. Ohne Bauern kein Essen.
Viele Parteien sagen, wir sind die Mitte, aber genau in dieser Mitte eigentlich Bedarf gesehen wird für neue Angebote. Man merkt auch, dass da eine Regierung ist, die eigentlich nicht zusammenpasst. Also ich rechne damit, dass die Wahlbeteiligung höher sein wird, als sie vor 5 Jahren war. Es ist der Regierung nicht gelungen, die Leute davon zu überzeugen, dass der Kurs, den sie einschlägt, richtig ist. Eine hohe Wahlbeteiligung ist vor allem auch eine Gefahr für die Parteien, die um die 5%-Hürde kämpfen.
Ich lese sehr gerne die Epoch Times schon seit Jahren, weil ich mich da ausgesprochen gut unterrichtet fühle.
Die Ausgewogenheit in der Epoch Times, die ist sehr bemerkenswert.
An der Epoch Times schätze ich, dass sie einfach eine frische Perspektive auf die Dinge gibt, aber zugleich auch werteorientiert und traditionsbewusst im Sinne von wirklich professionellem, nüchternem, neutralem, wahrheitsorientiertem Journalismus ist.
An der Epoch Times imponiert mir, dass da insgesamt recht zahm aufgetreten wird und nur die Informationen gebracht werden und nicht gleich auf irgendjemanden drauf rumgehackt wird.
Ich kann bei der Epoch Times keinen Haltungsjournalismus feststellen, also konnte ich bisher noch nicht.
Das ist sehr angenehm für mich, dass ich da eine unabhängige Zeitung vor mir habe.